This morning, what Texas mayors want from Washington. Nearly 100 of them sent a letter to Congress. We'll ask the mayor who wrote that letter about the response he's received. The opening of schools pushed back to September in Dallas and Fort Worth. Will kids go back at all this fall? One of our questions for Dr. Kelvin Becker, Dallas's COVID czar. The president says no undocumented immigrants can be counted in the census, and that could cost Texas some power in Congress. And a county judge outside Houston has had enough with hateful comments online. This morning, he has a message for every one of us.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
And good Sunday morning to you. We have several guests from across the state to get to, but first want to update you on some of the top political headlines across Texas. There is bipartisan support to remove Confederate statues from the U.S. Capitol, and 6 Texas Republicans are joining Democrats on the issue. Dallas Morning News reports out that list, saying that Congressman Will Hurd from Del Rio, Michael Burgess from Flower Mound, Van Taylor from Plano, Dan Crenshaw from Houston, Mike McCall from Austin, and Pete Olson from Sugar Land all support removing Confederate statues there at the U.S. Capitol. Now to international espionage. Has China been using Texas as a home base for spies? The U.S. ordered China to close its consulate right there in Houston. The State Department says China was using this Texas facility to steal trade secrets. Hours after that order, we watched consulate employees burn papers in a courtyard of the complex. Then Friday, China retaliated, making the U.S. close one of its consulates in China. And in case you missed it, another poll shows Joe Biden leading Donald Trump in Texas. Quinnipiac did this survey of 880 Texans. Biden there at 45%, Trump at 44%. This is within, though, the margin of error. This poll also found that support is narrowing for Governor Abbott. Look at his job approval. 48% of Texans approve of Abbott's job, but 44% do not. Till now, Abbott had enjoyed a much wider margin. And now to the letter that every member of Congress from Texas has in their inbox right now. Mayors across the state say they need help. Nearly 100 cities are represented on that list, and the man who wrote the letter is with us this morning. It's the mayor of Arlington, Jeff Williams. Mayor, it looks like you are at City Hall. Good morning to you.
Yes, I am, Jason, and good morning to you.
Well, to start with this letter here, what have you heard back from federal lawmakers in the days since you sent this?
Well, we've gotten a very favorable response, Jason, and it's across the country. Cities have been hit with this natural disaster. It's much like a hurricane or tornado or flooding. And when these things hit, we need help for emergency and medical services, which we certainly received. And then now we need money to be able to rebuild our communities so that we can be the true economic engine that this country needs right now.
And I know you put this letter together pretty quickly to get to D.C., but I'm curious, roughly, how much money are we talking about? If you don't know collectively, how much does Arlington need?
Well, for us, we can look. We have a $20 million shortfall right now, and that's from March through September. And then, of course, most Texas cities are all looking at a major reduction in our property tax revenue because of property values going down. Other states, it's going to be their income tax going down because people aren't able to work. And so consequently, we are projecting that it's going to be $1.5 trillion reduction here over the course of this next year in losses here to cities across America.
$1.5 trillion. How much of that do you think is made up here in Texas?
I don't know the answer to that, but we definitely can tell that we have been a state that has been hard hit too. We have not escaped the virus. It knows no state boundaries or no city boundaries. It has gone all across America.
And Mayor, not to overstate or misstate, but what if Texas cities do not get the financial assistance from the federal government? What will happen?
Well, it's going to be a longer economic recovery, and we're not going to be as effective in helping our businesses and our families in recovering from this. And of course, as I mentioned right at the beginning, cities are one of the main economic engines of our country. And of course, also our citizens are looking here to our cities to help lead them out of this. We have been one of the big creators of jobs. We build more infrastructure than any other entity in America, and so we're going to be crippled, and we need help, just like we have always gotten when we have a hurricane or tornado. The difference in this is that we don't know how long this virus is going to last. Neither do we know how long the economic impact is going to be, and so it does make it harder there to be able to predict the future.
Yeah.
But we know too, we have an unseen enemy right here, but we need to be able to recover, and people need to be able to put food on the table.
Mayor, for our viewers across the state, Arlington, of course, is the home to the Dallas Cowboys and to the Texas Rangers. How much is the city losing right now in tax revenue without baseball this summer?
Well, a lot of that 20 million that I just projected from March through September is directly related to baseball. There, needless to say, we also have events that would normally be taking place at AT&T Stadium, and then Six Flags would be in full swing, and none of those things are happening right now. But I could go on. Shopping is at an all-time low. Our restaurants are doing less than anyone else. Our manufacturers have been crippled, and then we don't have students at the University of Texas at Arlington. Normally we'd have 44,000 there. Well, you see in each one of those categories, we are seeing that hit cities all across the state and across America right now. The story is the same, that this virus and this natural disaster hits the economy.
And then, Mayor, finally here, I want you to tell me briefly in the final moments how this letter came about. You got almost 100 mayors. You got 96 of them from across the state, large and small mayors, small city mayors, to sign on to this. Did you get on the phone and talk to everyone? Email? What happened?
No, basically, I did get on the phone and talk to some, and then from there, word spread. Our Texas Municipal League helped us too, but we put this together in about 48 hours. It wasn't hard, and we knew it wouldn't be hard to be able to get the signatures to sign on, and it's happening this way across America too. Yeah. Cities all across America are banding together because we want to see our citizens to be able to enjoy a great prosperity like we were before this virus hit.
All right. Mayor Jeff Williams from Arlington, good to see you again. Good luck to you guys.
Thank you, Jason.
Now to another issue that could affect every single city in this state as well. The Trump administration wants to leave undocumented immigrants out of the census count this year. Remember, the census is not about who is and who is not a citizen. It's about how many people live in a specific area at a specific time. And the problem for Texas here is if you do not count everyone, that could cost Texas some of its influence and power in Congress. Back with us this morning is Ross Ramsey, the co-founder and executive editor of the Texas Tribune. Good morning, Ross.
Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Doing well. You know, it looks like the president is trying to maybe use this to stoke his base, and critics say that it's not constitutional. Courts will have to decide this, right?
Yeah, and there are already lawsuits within 48 hours of them filing this memo. Texas has 1.8 million, an estimated 1.8 million undocumented immigrants. It's about 6% of the population. It's equivalent to a little more than 2 congressional seats. If you take them out of the count, you lose that many seats, you lose that much clout.
And that is a lot of clout. Let's move on to sports now. There will be some sports on college campuses next month, even football at UT Austin. Are health officials at all concerned about what might happen?
Yeah, they are. They're watching baseball very carefully to see how things go over the next month. But right now, the University of Texas plans to open its stadium to 50% of its capacity, 50% occupancy. And I guess that'll depend on where the coronavirus sits at that time.
Yeah, and 50% is what the governor said, nothing over 50, right?
Right. So, if they did it today, they would do 50%. If they did it today, health officials would be pretty worried about it. They're hoping things abate a little bit before they open the stadiums.
Yeah, we all are. All right, Ross, back to you in a moment. Thank you. Coming up, Texas school districts pushing back the start of class. Will younger kids return at all, though, this fall semester? We'll ask Dallas's COVID czar. And a county judge says enough with the hateful and racist comments online. He has a message for all of us. We'll talk to Judge K.P. George from Fort Bend County when Inside Texas Politics returns. Texas school districts are busy planning how and when students should return, but teachers are doing something else this summer. We didn't believe it at first, but teachers across the state have spent this summer putting their wills together, doing estate planning, worrying that they could get COVID in class when school eventually returns. And several of those teachers speak to us in this latest episode of Y'all-itics. That's our political podcast. If your mobile phone is handy there, turn on the camera. Point it here at this QR code on your screen. It will take you directly to this latest episode. Pause us if you have to do that. While you are there, though, take a moment and subscribe to Y'all-itics as well. Let's stay on school for a moment. It's on a lot of people's minds right now. Parents cannot return to work if they have nowhere to send their children. Will kids go back at all this fall? That's one of the things that I asked Dallas's COVID czar, Dr. Kelvin Becker. I've been seeing a lot of headlines about more children getting infected. What do you make of that, and how susceptible are children? Because it seems like the stories are all over the place on this.
Yeah, I would like to say that we have clear data and science regarding the rate of this infection within children. We're trying to extrapolate from some other sources, countries as well, that are further along in terms of the incidence of this, but we just don't know. What we do know is that children can get sick. What we also know is that children can serve as a transmitter of the virus as well. So there's still so many questions out there regarding the pediatric population that I would say that there's much more to learn. That should also encourage us to be increasingly cautious around the ways that we support our children, the things that we suggest or recommend to parents regarding our children, and also how we safely create environments for our children to enter into and participate.
You mentioned going back to school in the fall. What does your gut tell you? Are kids going back to in-person classes at all this semester?
Well, I certainly hope so. I think for academic reasons, social, emotional, and other child welfare reasons in some situations, that it's incredibly important that we do everything possible to get them back in the classroom. But we want to do so safely. So my hope is that we will have a safe environment that they can enter into. And that means what we're doing in our community, what we're seeing in terms of rates of new cases and hospitalizations. But that's what we're seeking to achieve.
Do you have kids, Dr. Becker?
I do. We have two children. We have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old.
Are you going out to restaurants, or are you out in the community at all with your family?
So we're not going into restaurants where we're seated. We are ordering takeout. That's what I'm encouraging others to do as well. Obviously, our small businesses and other businesses need our support. And quite honestly, that helps to reduce some of the burden in our households as well. So where possible, I'm advocating for people to go in, to patronize these restaurants, but also to make sure that they're looking to get orders to go.
And then the last thing, Dr. Baggett, a message to worried parents who want to get their kids back in class if it's safe, or who are afraid to send their kids back.
What I'd say is we're doing everything we can to make it safe for the kids to return to school. As I mentioned, I have 2 children who are of school age. We also want you to do everything that you can. So there's been this illusion of safety in having kids come into your home and gather with your kids. We want to reduce that. There's also I don't think the increased awareness around the risk for youth sports and activities, as we've discussed. So we all need to collectively come together to be able to reduce the spread of this virus so that we can return to school, so that we can return to our office environments, and so that we can also resume some of these other social activities as well.
That's Dr. Kelvin Becker there from Dallas. Now to Fort Bend County, just outside Houston. The county judge there tweeted something we wanted to talk about more on our program this morning: anger and hate at our fellow Texans. This county judge, who was born in India, tweeted a collage of hateful and racist messages. We can't show them to you this morning, but he has gotten these online in recent weeks. And his message this morning is simple: call these people out. Stand up for your neighbors, your co-workers, and your children's classmates. This judge, K.P. George, is on the line with us right now from Richmond. Judge, thanks so much for the time. Let's talk about the social media post that you sent out. What do you want people to do when you say stand up to the bullies online?
This is nothing happened new. And, as soon as I came into office, this has been happening all the time. So it is a change happened over the years, but it yielded that result in 2018. But if you were not watching that change happening, it is too bad. So they feel like, sometimes I feel like I took something belongs to some people. That's the way I feel it.
What do you mean by that?
This is based on this post and all. They feel like, this guy took something.
Yeah.
Was mine.
You mentioned diversity. I lived in Fort Bend County for 8 years. Fort Bend County is one of the most diverse racially and ethnically places in this state. Wow. Are you surprised at some of the things that people were writing to you online?
It is surprising, and also it is kind of ignorance because they haven't seen how the county changed. We have almost 1/3 of the population is not born in the United States. They came from outside, including me.
Yeah.
But they are always part of, and I always say that I am a U.S. citizen by choice because this is the best place I can live and I can raise my family, and I choose to be here. Don't call me any less of an American than anybody else.
We have just a few seconds left here. I want to ask you about COVID. Fort Bend County is the 11th highest county in the state when it comes to coronavirus cases. When do you see this trending down?
Honestly, that is $1 million question. We used to have around 5% per 100 testing positive. Now it is up to 13.9 in Fort Bend County. Wow. And so also our hospitalization percentage was around 59.5 until 10 days ago. And now it is 69%, 69.5% COVID patients. So that's a 13% spike in numbers. So I believe this has got a lot to do with we are opening up early. We are having, getting out and, enjoying our Memorial Day weekend and all those stuff. And so now we have to tighten up and, most part, we are doing that. And so we are watching it very closely. And if you ask me when it is going to flatten, I hope it happened. I wish it happened yesterday. And I'm hoping it happened tomorrow. But we are taking a day at a time.
All right. Judge George, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Good luck to you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Here's what we do know. The coronavirus has infected the state budget. Texas Comptroller Glenn Hager said so. That means that lawmakers face tough decisions in a few months. We'll talk about budget cuts on the table next on the Roundtable.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Ross is back, and joining us each week is Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram and Bernadine Steptoe, political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Ross, will start with you and the president's current campaign message. It seems to really center on protests and civil unrest. Is that message going to resonate or motivate Texas voters?
The question really in Texas is going to be, what does it do for or against suburban voters? They've got to play for suburban Republican women, and how they receive that message is going to determine whether it works here. It seems to work in rural areas better than suburban areas so far, but it's early.
And Bud, the battle is in the suburbs, but polls show the president still is not doing very well in Texas.
It looks like a close race for him in Texas, and I don't think people are going to be very motivated when they see protests in Portland and they see the president quashing them. It really hurts the president not to have his Jacksonville convention, not because of the convention, but because of all the protests that he could have video of outside, and all the the protests that would make Democratic campaign, that would make Republican campaign ads for him. He needs that video of protest to show he's the tough guy standing up for America.
And Bernadine, when he mentioned Jacksonville, you kind of snickered over there. Why?
No, because I think that he's correct that the president likes to show conflict, and to have protesters outside of his convention would work well for him. But I want to address what you said earlier in terms of the suburban voters. they are no different than the rest of the voters in terms of they are concerned about the pandemic. Now he can have protests and he can what law and order, but the problem is at this point in Texas, people are just as concerned about the pandemic as anywhere else.
Yeah, indeed so. I want to talk about the Texas legislature, though, Ross. It's back, what, 4 or 5 months away, 5 months away from right now. And Glenn Hager, the Texas comptroller, essentially said, hey, you legislators, when you come back, we don't have any money to spend. What do you expect to really kind of be first on the chopping block? Because there aren't a lot of things that Texas really has to spend money on.
I think they're okay in the current budget. They've got to make some big adjustments, but I think they're all right. As they go into the next 2-year budget, which they'll write in the first 6 months of next year, they're going to have to look at public education and health and human services if they have to cut spending, because those are the two biggest parts of the budget. There's also our politically hazardous. People like a lot of the stuff in public education and health and human services. So it's going to be a tough session.
And health and human services, Bud, let's talk about health care bills. Do you expect that to be kind of an issue at all come January?
Well, and that depends how the Texas House falls out. If it comes out to be a blue House, if Democrats flip the House, the Democrats start talking about expanding Medicaid. They start talking about adding paid sick leave, mandatory insurance. They start talking about adding things that will cost a little bit more money, although expanding Medicaid would bring in a lot more federal money. That means they'd have to find some other ways to cut.
Bernadine, about 30 seconds left. It really does depend on what happens in November, right?
That's what I was getting ready to say. And if the House goes more to blue, then you're going to see less of the funds that go to education cut, because that's where they're going to focus. So I think that is going to depend a lot on the election in November.
All right, guys, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching as well. We're back again next Sunday with another episode of Inside Texas Politics. Hope to see you then. Take care.